My uncle left me a shifty little bar in his will. The employees here sleep in the back room. Series.
I started receiving weird VHS tapes in the mail. I never asked for them, but they keep arriving day after day. In every package is a note telling me the exact time to share it with the world, to get it seen by as many people as possible. If I don't, they said, bad things will happen. The following presentation is the contents of one of those tapes. Please help me and watch until the end.
My uncle was an odd, lonely man. That one guy you try to avoid at family reunions. The one nobody knows too well but loves to talk about nonetheless. I think he liked me best because I never really enjoyed bad-mouthing him. I wouldn't say we were close, but we tolerated one another. At least that's how it was when I was little. We never bothered to stay in contact. I forgot about him by the time I left home. That's why the news of his death caught me completely by surprise. Uncle Mac was alone in his apartment when he had a heart attack causing cardiac arrest. He fell unconscious and died within minutes. Then there was me at the time. I had just flunked out of college and the only thing I was actually good at was playing video games. When I was contacted by Mac's lawyer, I was even more shocked. Mac had left me 3 things: a box of sorted letters addressed to me, all the money he used to own, which to me was a lot, and his bar, the one he had inherited from his father and had worked at all his life. I'll be frank, I had no idea what to do with the bar, but I knew from the very start I'd take it over. I felt kind of honored. This had basically been Uncle Mac's entire life and he was giving it to me of all people. Sure, from what I knew they hadn't been many friends or loved ones in his life to choose from, but it was still flattering to me. Once I read the first letter, I was even more convinced. Hi Julia, if you're reading this, my bad eating habits have probably caught up to me. Or maybe someone killed me, who knows. As of me writing this, you're 15 years old. You were the only one to talk to me at the family reunion today. Not for long, but more than just an awkward hello. I notice these things and I appreciate it. That's why I'm trusting you with the most important task anyone in this family is ever going to offer you. You are going to take over my bar. Besides, knowing you, you're not gonna have much of a career anyways, so you might as well. Once you're done reading this, please go to the bar at your earliest convenience. Take the box of letters with you and stash it away somewhere there. It has some valuable advice you're gonna need down the line. In fact, you will need to read the second letter right after your arrival. You'll find my employees are a bit special. Anyways, I hope you're doing alright, however this letter finds you. You're a good kid, Leah. Always have been. Besides, the only person you could possibly disappoint by screwing this up is dead, so there's no pressure to impress. Sincerely, your Uncle Mac. I wiped my eyes. They had actually gotten a bit watery while I was reading the letter. I folded the letter and tucked it back into the box before grabbing my coat and bag. Mac's bar was a train ride and a 30-minute walk away from my parents' place, which is where I was residing at the moment. I figured I would probably have to look for a place close to the bar if I really would start working there full time. When I finally arrived at the establishment, it looked almost exactly the way I had expected. It was just another wall in the row of buildings on the street off to the side from the inner city's market square. A large, bright red double door with a neon sign reading the new saloon above it. It would probably glow if I'd find out how to switch it on. At least I hoped it would glow. It felt weird, and locking the door and opening it for the first time, all on my own. Entering and looking around inside felt even weirder. The new saloon was your typical old-style dive bar. Even completely empty, it looked overcrowded. The fabric of the cushioned seats was stained and frayed. The walls behind and in front of the counter were plastered with neon beer signs and large framed photos of people I didn't know. Some were even in black and white. The floors were dirty and my heels stuck to them when I walked further in. This place was small, shabby and smelly, and I loved it. It was so strange, but I suddenly just felt like this bar was mine, and that I needed to take care of it and protect it. Remembering what Mac had told me in his first letter, I pulled the second one out from the box and unfolded it. Hi Julia, if you're reading this, you're probably at the bar for the very first time. How do you like it? Let me guess. It's ugly and gross, but it instantly started growing on you? Don't worry, it's about to get a lot weirder. You'll find the entrance to the back room behind the counter. The light switch is on the inside of the wall. Make sure to turn it on before you head inside because there's stairs leading down right behind the door. It's a death trap. Once you're in there, stand in the middle of the room. Stay away from the walls. You may then say out loud the following words. Spirits of this house, by the power of the spell that has bound you, I command you to serve. You'll see what happens next. Whatever happens, keep in mind you can order them around. When all the work is done, simply tell them to go back into their room. You've got this. Sincerely, your Uncle Mac. I frowned. That was odd. Was this the prelude to some kind of joke? I walked over to the door behind the counter and pressed down the handle. It swung open with a loud creaking noise and I began to grope around for the light switch. A single light bulb down in the back room came flickering on and I proceeded down the rickety wooden stairs. No banisters. Risky, especially with the shoes I was wearing. By the time I had reached the middle of the room, my heart was already beating faster than it should. Still, if this was a prank, Mac had been planning it for over 5 years, and I was not about to ruin it. Besides, no one was watching anyways. I cleared my throat. Spirits of this house, I began, a giggle swinging along in my voice. By the power of the spell that has bound you, I command you to serve. Nothing. Not a single sound for 5 whole seconds. I looked around the room. It was completely empty, except for a single door in the wall across from me. Maybe I had been supposed to say it in whatever room was behind that one. Just as I was about to walk over to it, a loud noise came from one of the walls to the side. I spun around to find that it had cracked open. Bits of it were beginning to crumble to the floor as the tear widened. I stared at it with my mouth agape, frozen in place and incapable of comprehending what I was seeing there. From the crack, a set of long, bony pale fingers reached out into the room, gripping the inside of the wall. My throat was too dry to produce a proper scream, but I couldn't contain a gasp as I staggered backwards until my back met with the other wall behind me. It was then that I felt cold palms rubbing against my neck and hands closing around my shoulders from behind. This time, I shrieked. I whirled around again only to see that there was a hole there too. Long, skinny arms slowly moving forward from it, grabbing at me, searching for me. I glanced around the room frantically. Holes had opened in basically every spare spot. I counted 4 sets of arms pulling themselves out into the light, followed by similarly slender upper bodies. By the time I finally thought to run back up the stairs and save myself, the people from inside the walls were standing in the back room, fully emerged from their dark hideouts. I didn't risk another look at them. When I finally reached the top stair, I dashed back into the bar and slammed the door shut behind me. I pressed myself up against it just to keep standing. My knees had grown weak beneath me and I was panting heavily, my mind racing. Then I heard them. Slow, light footsteps making their way up the staircase and stop on top of it. I heard calm, steady breathing coming from the other side of the door. I tensed up and shifted my weight on my feet, leaning up against it to keep whomever was in there from getting out. I was sure this person would start to try pushing it open, but to my surprise, nothing happened. Instead, a voice rang out from inside. "Excuse me, who are you exactly?" It was a man's voice. I had expected something like a growl, or a hiss, or the groans of some decomposing zombie, but this was distinctly more articulate. It sounded almost polite. I didn't know what to do other than respond. "Julia," I stammered. "Julia," the man sounded surprised. "What about Mac?" "Wait, if you're here." He sounded quite sad now. "Mac's dead, isn't he?" "Yes," I replied quietly. His heart stopped. "That's, good God." He fell silent and I heard him utter a shaky sigh, almost like a sob. "I'm sorry, would you give me a moment? I need to tell the others." "Go ahead," I murmured. "Never mind, they heard us. So, will you let us out now or? Who are you? Why were you in there?" "We work here, actually. My name is Andrick. I do most of the organizing here. I take care of the accounting, our profits, our spendings. I place the orders on most of what we need. Back here with me, I've got Bo, who is our bouncer, and Danica and May, both waitresses." "You work here," I repeated, "and you live in the walls? After your shift is over, do you just go down there and melt into the room or what?" I couldn't help but let out a nervous chuckle at the mental image. This was just too absurd. At least I was breathing normally now. "Pretty much, yes." I shook my head. "What are you?" "Well, to explain that you would have to go exactly 122 years back, so it's a long story. Andrick replied, all you need to know for now is that if you let us out, we'll get the bar up and running right away. We've been working under Mac ever since he took over this place though, so you'll have to excuse us if we're a bit gloomy. No, that's fine, I muttered, slowly turning away from the door and carefully pulling it open. The man in front of me was of normal height, slender and looked to be in his 30s. Despite being dressed in jeans and a simple black t-shirt with the bar's name printed on it in white, swirly letters, he had a very official look to him. Maybe it was the way he stood, straight as a rod with a friendly yet matter-of-fact smile on his face. Thank you, he said. Turning back to the room, he raised his voice. You heard it everyone. Mac might be gone and while that's a downer, our work isn't over. So get yourselves up here and let's get this going again. His tone carried the flat motivation the coach of a youth sports team might have. 3 more people emerged from the back room, all dressed exactly like Andrick, all of them that same content little grin on their lips. They walked by me offering polite greetings. The first one, a large, bulky guy giving me a curt nod and the 2 women that followed smiling brightly. The girls were a little younger than Andrick, maybe in their late 20s. Both had blonde hair hanging down their shoulders in wavy pigtails. That first night the bar was open, I merely watched the backroom people work, following them around while they ignored me. It was eerie. They looked almost like automated mannequins, going about their routine by sticking to pre-planned paths, like there were set directions painted somewhere I couldn't see. I soon began to notice other distinctive attributes about them. None of the people from the walls had fingernails. I saw it on the waitresses when they reached for the cups handed to them, on Andrick when he scribbled down notes. However, that was not the only thing off about them. All those little details in their faces, the kind of thing you'd normally never pay attention to, they didn't add up. For example, their eyes didn't line up. One was always slightly lower than the other, just enough for someone to notice. Their nostrils were different width and one of the girl's pinky fingers was the same length as her ring finger. Had I not known that they had just crawled out from the backroom walls, I would have chalked these harmless little oddities up to simple, inconspicuous deformities. But knowing what I knew, it made my skin crawl with uncomfort. I soon found out that Andrick did most of the talking for them. Bo rarely ever said a word, and all the waitresses did was whisper amongst themselves, giggle and chat with the patrons. Eventually, Andrick waved me over to him behind the counter. Alright, to give you a rundown of the place, we have a cash-only system. We rely on our local clientele, but once in a while someone new comes by and then we try and keep them around. Obviously, here's some of our regulars. He pointed at a lady sitting in a corner, weeping over an empty glass of whiskey. That's Shauna. Comes here whenever she can. Only ever orders whiskey. Will not stop crying. His finger wandered over to an old, short man with an almost disproportionately large head and short white hair. He was sitting at one of the tables as well, talking to 2 younger women who seemed very much out of place. That's Tommy. He's likely to start fights but he drinks a lot and tips very generously. Bo throws him out a lot but he's very easy on him, so don't worry. He finally nodded towards a tall glass of wine standing lonely on the counter right in front of us. And this is Irene. She can't pay but she's always welcome. She's very nice and she's been here ever since Mac's family started this business. Andrick, there's nothing there. The pale man threw me a confused glance. What do you mean? She's right. Oh, of course. Don't worry, you'll start seeing her with time. Either way, for now there's actually not much for you to do except read up on barkeeping once you get the chance. However, you should start getting acquainted with the regulars. After all, the owner of the new saloon will always be part of the reason why people come here. He paused as his mouth started to twitch into an almost guileful grin. I have a feeling they're going to love you. I retreated into the ladies' room for a quick break. I sat down on one of the toilets and buried my face in my palms. I had no idea what was going on or what I was supposed to do. Andrick had made himself pretty clear when it came to the instructions he'd given me, but all of this was so surreal I seriously considered the possibility of me having suffered some kind of blow to the head and dreaming it. I spent the rest of the night standing behind the counter and observing their every move. Andrick kept to my side mostly, looking at me with the kind of suspicion I probably had in my eyes as well. I couldn't figure him out. I accidentally on purpose walked by the waitresses who were talking to each other in hushed voices, picking up on small bits of their conversation. Her blood is weaker than his. Do you think she's? We shouldn't take any chances. Remember what Mac did when we tried to test him? I do. But this could be our chance to have some fun. Her words sent chills down my spine. Remembering Mac's letter, however, I decided this was not the time to show I was frightened. You're going to do no such thing. I chimed in from behind them. I don't care what you are, but I promise I'll find a way to make this whole thing very uncomfortable for you guys if you try to pull any kind of weird crap on me. The looks they gave me were worth my initial doubt. They seemed shocked that I had listened in on them at all, let alone spoken up. I glared at them, holding their gaze and ignoring the trembling of my legs. Their heads lowered, they marched off. When the bar began to clear out and we got ready to close down for the night, I told the 4 of them to clean up. Of course I helped, but I made sure never to lose sight of a single one of them. I felt like they were wild, hungry animals, waiting for their chance to pounce on me. Whenever I looked up from the rag I was wiping the countertop with, I would find one of them staring at me. By the time we were done, the place really did look a lot more welcoming. It certainly was cleaner, despite the 4 workers' angry faces spoiling the mood. We carried the cleaning supplies back into the small storage chamber next to the employee restroom before I went to open the backroom door for them. Okay everyone, good job today. Thanks a lot. Now back inside, I called out, almost enjoying the feeling of authority as they came trotting towards me and made their way down into the dimly lit basement single file. Andrick was the last one to cross the threshold. Right before descending the staircase, he turned to face me once more. You were keeping a close eye on us, he said quietly. That's clever, but you're going to need to keep it up and let's see how long you'll last. Who knows what might happen. He gave me a sly wink with the one eye that was a little lower on his face before following his co-workers. I watched from the top of the stairs as they leaned up against the walls. It was almost as I had expected. Their bodies seemed to melt into the holes they had come from, sealing them shut and not leaving so much as a thin crack. Lacking a better option, I stayed at a nearby inn that night. As bizarre and frightening as all of this had been, I got out of it unscathed. The bar workers and I would end up coming to blows in the future though, more than once. And I wouldn't always be that lucky.